Hey guys, today we are back in the saddle with this Mercedes caster. Now first off, I've got the base mounted in my vise, ready to be prepped for some new frame rails, and we'll move on from that, but we're going to have to go ahead and get started and not talk a whole lot because we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get going. Okay, so here's the base, and I'm going to go ahead and use this base for, or at least I'm going to try to use this base for the project. Now what I want to do is replace these pseudo frame rails that Matchbox put in this base and put in my own frame rails. Now I could just attach to here, but I want to go back further because I want this to be solidly mounted to this base. But if I was to just glue it to the front here, this would be a real weak spot. So I think I want to file back or file down these frame rails here, and yeah, there's plenty of thickness there, but I'm going to leave the bulk of this transmission in place, like maybe right to here. I could get fancy and try to, maybe file down this transmission pan. I'll play with that, but right now I think what I want to do is I want to cut this out here, and then I want to start to file down. So let's get started with that, and then once I have this prepared, I can then make some measurements for the frame rails. Okay, so I think I've got it finished, or at least for now. Here's what it looks like. Let's see if we get this to focus. And what I did here is I started out by dremeling the frame rails down about half to 2/3 down. I finished that with a file, and then once I got the file down, I filed down to about 95%, and then I finished off with an X-Acto knife. You can really get a fairly clean surface with an X-Acto. I also filed away the text that was on the base here. It was just kind of in the way, and I was afraid I was going to have a hard time getting the new frame rails flush if some of that got in the way. These plastic bases are really nice to work with. I've worked with both the plastic and the Zamac bases, and the metal bases are a lot harder to work with. Of course, the final result I think is better. Here's an original base, and you can see the difference in the work that's been done. Also, before I finished, if you don't have more than one base, before I finished, I also took measurements of the width and the height of the frame rail. So I've got that. At this point, what I'm going to do here is, I did some research. And what I noticed with a lot of these gasser frames is that most of them went out and up just a little bit above the front wheels and tires, or that front axle. And I'm going to do a straight axle, and then also I'll design in a leaf spring, and that's what the straight axle will mount to. So this part is done. I think now I need to take some measurements on some scale gassers, just to see how long I need to go and how tall I need the stance to be in the front. Hey guys, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and cut in here because I have about 10 or 15 minutes of me taking measurements on this Mercedes gasser to be, as well as this Nova gasser that I picked up. But you know what, I'm going to spare you the pain of watching me fiddle around with a pair of calipers. So just take it to heart that I spent a good amount of time taking some measurements so that I could move on to the next step, which is building the frame rails. I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and just go to the computer and we'll start that. Okay, so I'm at the computer right now, and what I've got on the screen here is the program I use to do some of my 3D modeling. This is Fusion 360, which is actually a pretty powerful 3D modeling program, I also use a program, well, it's one of those online deals called Tinkercad. And both these programs are free, and either of these bits of 3D modeling software would have been fine to make these frame rails. So, but I went ahead and went with Fusion. It's a little more powerful than Tinkercad, and it allows for iteration just in a way that's easier. So let me show you what I did. Here's the sketch, which is basically a two-dimensional drawing of what you're building. And then what you do is you take this sketch and you will extrude that out into 3D. At least for this there's different ways you can use Fusion, and that's what I'm using right now. Here's the frame rail, and to get the dimensions for all these pieces, I measured both the Mercedes, little Mercedes, and I also measured the Nova Wagon gasser, and I think that's got me pretty close. And so this is sort of the rough drawing I got for my frame rails in 2D. And so I took this sketch, which is what the terminology that Fusion uses. I used this sketch, this two-dimensional drawing, extruded this up into 3 dimensions, and this is what I got. So this is the model that I'm going to use for my frame rail. At least this is actually about the 3rd iteration of this of these frame rails. I printed out a couple; they weren't quite right. I had to trim it, and that's what you have to do with this sort of building. Is you're going to have to iterate a little bit to get it right. And even this isn't perfect. This little mount for the hinge for the hood isn't quite right. I still need to massage that just a little bit, but it's pretty close. Anyway, this is what I'm going to 3D print. So I went ahead and exported this as an .stl file, and I brought that to my, this is a slicer. This is the program you use to set up your 3D print. What this does is you take your 3D model that you designed in another program and then prepare that model for printing on your printer. So this is the program that basically builds all the instructions for the 3D printer to use whenever it's moving back and forth to build your object in the real world. So once you get your settings, and this particular program has just a whole host of settings, although you don't have to mess with these. There's general settings for just about every printer out there that's already preset, and you don't have to mess with these if you don't want to. And once you get those set, you go ahead and build your file. So I've already built the file. It hasn't saved it yet, but it's prepared to be saved. What this visualization does is it actually shows the paths and the lines of filament as they get laid down on your printer, which is pretty cool. And you can see, let me back this up, so you can see this represents the printer head as it moves, and it allows you to watch just to make sure that everything looks like it's going to print well. A lot of times you can pick up some mistakes in this screen right here. As a matter of fact, in one of my previous versions of this object, I made this area right here too narrow, too skinny. And what happened is it was too small for the printer to print, and so this program just deleted that portion of the model, and so there was just a blank spot here. You catch this in this particular part of the process, and then you know you need to fix that, which I did, and so I ended up with this. Anyway, that's a quick rundown of what I did to design and print the frame rails, and I think they turned out okay. So let me go ahead and jump back to the model, and I'll show you what they look like and where I'm at, because we still have a little bit of work to do. Okay guys, we are getting somewhere. So here I have the car mocked up, and I have the frame rails in place, and I think they're looking pretty good. I think the axles are in the correct spot, at least as far forward. You know, they're pretty much centered in the wheel well. The pivot for the hinge is pretty good also, although I need to work on this just a little bit more. And I'm not sure if the spring height is correct either, so I'm going to look at that once I get some tires and wheels on this, but I can't do that until I get the back tires fit. So to do that, I think I've decided to use these wheels off this M2 Mustang. This is a pretty cool car, actually, and the wheels are just perfect. These fat meats are going to be great. It's got skinnies up front. I like the wheels. I think it's going to be perfect. Okay guys, I got this, I think, done mostly. I might tweak this a little bit, but I think that looks pretty damn good. So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and install these frame rails and then put some tires and wheels on here, and I want to see what the stance of this car looks like. I'm really excited to see where we're going to be at, because the stance is what's going to make or break this car. So hopefully it looks good. Let me clean up my area and get these installed, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Alright guys, what do you think? It might be a little high in the front, I don't know, but I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. It's not perfect, but yeah, this is where I'm at, and I think I'm going to stick with this for now. I've got a lot of work in this last little bit with the stance, and I could probably easily finagle the base a little bit more to lower it up in the front, but I compared it to the Nova, and the Nova really has a very similar stance. It's just all blacked out underneath the fender, and it has the exhaust that kind of fills in there. This one doesn't have that. So I don't know, guys. What do you think? Am I onto something here? I want to keep working on this because I'm happy enough with where I'm at that I'm going to keep going. I still do need to narrow the axle, so the track is too wide. But yeah, I think we're getting there. All right, boys, this is it for me. I'll catch you guys next time, and y'all take care of yourselves, okay?